Yeah, how's that?
Good looking ball.
How's that?
Marco, thanks for coming. Thanks for being here today.
My pleasure, Scotty.
And in the future, I hope. Marco Santello, your title. Give me a little.
Yeah, I'm a professor of biomedical engineering at Arizona State University. And my field of expertise is human motor control. What that means is that I study and research how the brain controls movement and how the brain helps learning movement, the central nervous system, the entire interface between the central nervous system and the biomechanical system. And so that's what I do.
That's why we called you.
That is true.
We called Marco because you're the man that would know or could figure out, why does my technique work?
And that's why I accepted your invitation, because after I heard about you and saw some videos of what you were doing with your grip, and the application, to improving performance in golf,
Right.
I got very, very intrigued. My expertise is primarily on the upper limb and in particular the hand. And so
with the hand.
Yes.
You study the hand.
Exactly.
Nobody's better than you.
Both from a basic science perspective and also for clinical application, prosthetics, etc.
Yeah.
And so when you contacted me and I checked you out online on the internet, I thought, wait a minute, this is very intriguing how just changing the posture of your hand as you grab the golf club relative from the traditional posture.
Right.
You report that you have very different, performance.
Like night and day.
Yeah, and you've been doing this for many, many years. And so this, to me, sounds like a very interesting scientific and, problem, both from a perspective of nervous system and biomechanics.
You had mentioned something to me. And this has always intrigued me since you said it, about there's a theory, I don't know what it is, but there's a theory that you cannot gain power or distance or whatever and control. Tell me a little.
Yeah, so the idea is that if you try to do something, if you try to perform a movement very, very fast, you're going to sacrifice precision. And vice versa, meaning that if you do something very slow, if you want to hit a target, say, the typical experiment, it's like you reach for a big target, you can afford to go very, very fast and still hit the target.
Right.
But as I shrink the target, for you to be able to hit it precisely,
Right.
you would have to sacrifice the speed. So you tend to slow down to keep that level of precision. And so this is kind of one of the classic laws in motor control, which is also called the speed accuracy tradeoff. And so from that perspective, when I was looking at what changing your grip did to your swing, one thing that really got me curious is that in one of the videos that you have online, it showed that you were doing you hit the ball 3 times.
3 separate drives, yeah.
And the trajectory of the ball and where the ball ended was almost identical.
Well, actually what I did was I drew one a little, I cut one a little, and then I put one between them. So that...
And this is what really got my attention as far as, you're using a non-traditional grip.
Right.
But you don't seem to be penalized in terms of going slower or being more careful, the opposite. And I'm not, a golf expert or anything, but from a perspective of controlling movement precisely and getting to the ball, with that level of velocity.
Right.
That made me think, how is this working?
I think that's important for our audience to know too, is that and many of them do know because of our previous episodes, but instant distance, it was insane. I went from an average of 160-yard slicing tee shot to 350 in one moment, one split second.
Right.
And I went from slicing the ball with I'll call it the incorrect spin, to drawing the ball in one split second.
Oh, wow. He got all of that one. Scotty regularly hits 300-yard drives, longer than most touring pros. His longest ever is 406. And he puts them just where he wants them.
If you can hear me, this is coming in your back pocket.
Keep your eyes on the ball and listen carefully. That sound you just heard was his ball hitting our camera tripod from 200 yards out.
So, wow, accuracy and distance immediate. And then from then, my long right now is 421. So 421 yards compared to 160 is quite.
Yeah, it is remarkable.
And then hitting targets, that counts.
Exactly.
I think I showed you on the Dateline piece. We hit a target.
Yes. And this is really what got me thinking about all the potential mechanisms that might give you that advantage.
Yeah.
And this could be, purely biomechanical and/or neural, or a combination of both. So, for example, changing your wrist posture, and the way you grab the handle of the golf club. One relatively easy way to explain it, I'm not saying it's the correct one, but one possible way of explaining why you get that particular advantage could be because you're changing the length of your muscles, both from the arm, you are internally rotating the humerus, you're changing possibly a little bit the angle of your elbow joint, and definitely you're changing the length of your hand muscles, the extrinsic muscles of your fingers. So maybe, and again, it's a big maybe, because we need to kind of check it out, more systematically and quantitatively. But maybe you're changing the point, that the muscle length at which you're going to hold the club, and maybe you're holding it with a greater level of strength or accuracy. You might be engaging different populations of motor units. You might be increasing, and again, I'm stepping out of the.
Well, let's do this.
Yeah.
I want to prove that with you. I want to prove that with you right now.
Okay.
We're going to get up, and I'm going to show you something.
Okay.
That will, I think, help with that thought process.
Absolutely.
We'll get to that right now.
Let's do it.
Okay, so here's my theory. I have a student that gave me this theory, and I agree with it. It's really cool. It was a long time ago, too. His theory is this, that for decades, the golf swing, or golf instruction, has said to pull through with your left side.
Yep.
So he explained, and I explained like this is that you pull through with your backhand. You're pulling through. With my grip, this way, you're using your hand motion this way. It's completely flipped upside down.
Yeah.
Okay, so with that, obviously, we're using different muscle groups. So here was the theory. You stand here with me, here, that's good, just no resistance, but just stand there, comfortable, and we'll pull through with the left side with the backhand and hit you here, and hit you here, and this is what I get. I'll turn it over, reverse it, and hit you here, and hit you here, and hit you here.
Yeah.
And you can feel.
Yeah, there's definitely different amount of force, for sure.
So.
And I could see from your posture that it looks as if the force is transmitted more naturally and more effectively. And again, going back to what we mentioned earlier, it could be that those muscles have a better mechanical advantage throughout the swing, and that could explain why both your performance and performance of your students adopting that new posture might be getting better results, which is
certainly is due to the grip.
Yeah, and so now besides your accounts and the accounts of your students, I can't wait to put that to the test and actually measure things
In the lab.
Absolutely.
All right. Does that help at all? Does it?
It
That
does.
explains the theory of the at least the muscle use, because pulling through with your left side, there's just very little power. In fact, I can't even imagine doing that. And we saw the thrust change.
Yeah,
Power
so
change.
there is definitely a possibility that you're exploiting, so to speak, the same muscles in a different way by changing the posture. It is definitely a possibility, but that raises another question that also it's been in my mind since I saw your videos, and that is, if you were to compare how the left and the right hand share the total force exerted on the club as you swing, you're about to hit the ball, in the traditional posture as opposed to your grip posture, would you say that how they share that total force is significantly different, or would you say it's comparable at this point?
I would say it's quite different.
Okay.
It's quite different. It's quite different. Again, pulling through, if that's what the instruction is taught, it has been for decades, it's just a weak swing. There are naturally going to be those athletes that can perform it, but generally speaking, it's a weak swing. When I gripped it when I hit the first ball, this is the most important part for me because it was an accident.
Yeah.
Let's just always remember this was an accident.
Yeah.
So when I reached down and picked it up and went to strike the first ball, it wasn't that I was thinking, how's my posture? How do I look? It was actually out of pure frustration, out of almost anger. I was like, why can I not hit this golf ball?
Yeah.
So I grabbed it, went up, strutted, and swung, and produced that result instantly. So I'll start with, it forced my body into that play. It forced my body into that position to get that result, because I sure didn't think about, am I in the right position? Okay. And then the second ball, off the deck, same thing. Draw, long monster, and then a bucket of balls, and then after that, my life. So I would say that at that moment, I would say that it felt like the left hand obviously changed everything in the swing. I also talk about dominant side, because I believe this.
Right.
Baseball, darts, football, basketball, everybody dominant side. And then we get to golf and they say,
yeah, and this is fascinating because in your case, you're flipping that story of, using the non-dominant. In your case, in the case of most people that are right hand dominant.
Right.
You're using your non-dominant hand, if I can paraphrase what you just described, as doing most of the work, both in terms of, holding the golf club, but also driving it, through the golf ball. So from that perspective, it's interesting because in the motor control literature, there's a theory proposed by Bob Simberg at Penn State University, whereby the non-dominant and the dominant arms have a very different sensory motor control mechanisms, in a way that the dominant hand is better suited, at least measured in reaching movements, to anticipate the consequences of motion. So you can anticipate interaction torques, etc.
Sure.
Whereas the non-dominant, for most of us is the left arm, is better suited for postural control. But in your case, in other words, static task. In your case, you could argue that you are holding the club, so there is a postural component where you have an isometric force, where you're squeezing the handle. Whereby, but then again, the rest of the arm, the rest of the non-dominant limb of your left arm, are still driving the swing. So it would be really interesting to see how changing the posture of your grip and getting those performance advantages, what are the mechanisms? Because it doesn't quite fit the idea that the non-dominant arm should not be good at these dynamic tasks.
Right.
And yet, you're using a non-dominant hand, a non-dominant limb, and you're getting this performance advantage. So it would be really, really interesting to study this in a lab setting, or to get some measurements.
Well, that's going to be fun.
To see how the two hands kind of coordinate, with each other to get this particular task.
I can't wait. I can't wait to go to the lab.
Yeah, that will be fun.
So, I can't wait to find out why it works. You're the guy.
Yeah, no,
I'm excited. This is fun, man.
It's a really interesting scientific problem. There is another thing you mentioned I'd like to go back to, and that is that simply by changing your left hand posture, or left hand grip, I should say, you mentioned something which was very also interesting, that is that your entire body posture felt right, meaning it almost fell into a natural configuration that made everything feel more natural than we're using the traditional grip. That's another thing that it would be really, really interesting to actually measure. Of course, subjective reporting is great because, that's how you feel, and that's an important component of performance.
Sure. But the numbers won't lie.
Yeah, from the outside, it would be really, really cool to actually measure. There could be subtle changes across the entire body, or say more pronounced changes, I don't know, at the trunk, at the hip angle, whatever that might be. But it would be one way to see how you get this kind of chain effects on the entire body posture simply by changing, the arm and the wrist posture. It's just a thought. But
it changes your brain too, though. Because once you, I'll try to find an analogy. Imagine for the last 30 years, I've been riding in a horse and carriage, or you've been riding in a horse and carriage for 30 years. And then I'm going to pull a Corvette up today, and you jump in that vet, and you take off down the highway at 100 miles an hour. what kind of a feeling would that be?
Right.
That's what happened to me the moment I discovered this. So I think that mentally you get to a place where you're saying, did I just hit a 7 iron 220 yards? You know what I mean? And you're saying, did that really happen? And you did, so you build on that and you get better and better, and all of a sudden your brain says, I can't do anything else. When people ask me to hold the club like this, I feel like I'm holding a baby rattle, because I feel like a baby, because I don't feel any power. And as soon as I go, I can breathe again, and I crush the ball. So
what's even more intriguing, at least from my perspective, is that, from the outside, one could, I don't say dismiss, but could interpret what you're saying as, this is just you, it's your body. But then you showed me, and I saw, video clips, etc., and you told me the story of many, many people you taught this to. And it doesn't seem as if it's something idiosyncratic to Scotty, but it's something that everybody can learn,
So far, tens of thousands.
Yeah, so clearly the phenomenon seemed to be real.
Right.
The open question and the thing that you and I are going to be working on in the near future is, can we put some numbers and try to really crack this?
Oh, we can.
This mechanism, right? So
I'm so happy.
It's really cool.
Again, thanks. We'll see you again. We're going to do this in upcoming episodes. We'll
Absolutely.
keep pushing through and Yahoo.
Right.
Thanks.